Good evening, hello and welcome. You're with the News Today, your primetime destination. News, newsmakers, talking points. It's been another dramatic day in the Iran-Israel war. Bombs, threats, and then a claim of truce by Donald Trump. That's right. Michael Rubin, former Pentagon official, will join me for an exclusive as we look at just where the state of the war in Iran and Israel lies. We'll also have guests from Iran as well as guests from Israel. All bases covered. News without the noise. Former National Security Advisor to Netanyahu will also join me. But our top story. It's a war that could have seemingly ended just as abruptly as it began. For the last 12 days, West Asia and much of the world was on the precipice of an alarming war that could spiral out of control, even go nuclear. The world watched with increasing alarm. But as today, Donald Trump early this morning declared a truce between Israel and Iran, there was a sigh of relief. By the evening, there was uncertainty, with both countries continuing to violate the truce. They then said that no, they intend to fulfill the ceasefire. Either way, the uncertainty hasn't ended, but what has is at least the hope that West Asia could find its feet once again. Who won, who lost in this 12-day war is going to be our top focus. First, take a look at just how this conflict has played out for almost 2 weeks.
"12 days of missile strikes and bomb attacks. Three direct combatants, and at least 7 more countries indirectly involved. Not to mention 1,000 killed, with 5 times more than that figure injured. A war that wreaked chaos in West Asia and had the rest of the world on tenterhooks, fearing a nuclear apocalypse. From Operation Rising Lion to Operation Midnight Hammer, here is how this 12-day war unfolded. It began on the 12th of June. Israel launched a stunning pre-dawn offensive, Operation Rising Lion, targeting Iran's nuclear and military facilities, including Natanz and the Defense Ministry in Tehran. With deadly precision, several top Revolutionary Guard commanders and nuclear scientists were eliminated inside their own homes by projectiles launched hundreds of miles away.
For decades, the tyrants of Tehran have brazenly, openly called for Israel's destruction. They've backed up their genocidal rhetoric with a program to develop nuclear weapons. If not stopped, Iran could produce a nuclear weapon in a very short time. It could be a year, it could be within a few months, less than a year. This is a clear and present danger to Israel's very survival.
Iran's response was swift and defiant. 3 waves of missiles rained down on Israeli cities, and for the first time, Tel Aviv faced daylight attacks.
Their lives will become bitter, no doubt. They shouldn't think they hit and it's over. No, they started this and waged a war.
Day 5 marked a deadly pivot. Iran launched over 100 missiles, including hypersonic ones, striking Tel Aviv, Haifa, and most importantly, the Soroka hospital in Beersheba. Israel hit back, flattening nuclear sites and claiming the lives of top Iranian generals, even as civilian casualties and infrastructure damage mounted on both sides. As the conflict entered last weekend, it appeared to be dragging into a stalemate with both sides suffering heavy losses. Enter the B-2 bomber. After days of dropping confusing hints, Donald Trump had finally made up his mind. At the crack of dawn on Sunday, 6 American B-2 bombers flew into Iranian airspace from halfway across the world and dropped a 30,000-pound bomb known as the GBU-57 massive ordnance penetrator. This bunker buster bomb did exactly what its name suggests. Penetrate 200 feet into the ground and destroy Iran's suspected nuclear enrichment plant in Fordow. Meanwhile, Tomahawk missiles launched by the B-2s took out the other nuclear sites at Natanz and Isfahan. In a final act of defiance, Iran fired missiles at the US base in Qatar, but crucially with advance warning. No lives were lost, a message sent, but a line not crossed. Within hours, Donald Trump claimed to have brokered a ceasefire, beginning in a phased process. But the truce certainly hasn't begun on a peaceful note. Claiming that Tehran has broken the ceasefire with missile strikes, Tel Aviv vowed to strike back in the future, even as Trump warned all parties to play by the rules.
These guys got to calm down. It's ridiculous. I didn't like plenty of things I saw yesterday. I didn't like the fact that Israel unloaded right after we made the deal. They didn't have to unload. And I didn't like the fact that the retaliation was very strong. But in all fairness, Israel unloaded a lot. And now I hear Israel just went out because they felt it was violated by one rocket that didn't land anywhere. That's not what we want, I'll tell you. And I'm telling you, I'm not happy about that, Israel, either.
What's next may not be a question of missiles, but of diplomacy. Will this fragile truce hold? And for how long? Did this war really see a winner and a loser? And how close was the world towards a full-fledged war? Bureau Report, India Today.
And clearly an exasperated Donald Trump dropped not an N-bomb, but an F-bomb. Listen into what he said.
Basically have two countries that have been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what they're doing. Do you understand that?
They don't know what the F they're doing. Okay, the big questions. Is Donald Trump really behind the ceasefire or taking needless credit again? Who's won and who's lost in this war? Will this fragile peace really hold? What lies ahead for West Asia? We're going to raise all the big questions in a moment. My first guest, who I spoke to a short while ago, Michael Rubin, one of America's leading analysts. Listen into him. And joining me now, my first guest tonight is someone who's tracked the Trump administration and American government for years. Michael Rubin joins me there from Washington. Appreciate your joining us, Mr. Rubin. 12-day war. Let's cut the chase and ask the big question. Who's really won and lost this war?
Israel came out on top. They haven't won because they haven't achieved their aims. The uranium, the enriched uranium stockpile is still missing. But it does appear that Iran's nuclear program has been set back considerably. That said, Iran can still reconstitute this, and the ceasefire may have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory.
Let's get that again. You're saying the ceasefire may have snatched defeat from the jaws of victory. Are you saying, therefore, that Israel was not keen on a ceasefire, that they were pushed into this ceasefire, possibly by American pressure or, dare one say, Qatari mediation?
Israel was pushed into the ceasefire by American pressure, and we've seen that from the statements of Donald Trump. At the same time, all sides, I think, understood that there needed to be a pause because we're coming up to the month of Muharram in the Islamic calendar. And of course, on the 10th of Muharram is one of the major Shiite holidays where religious passions are naturally high. Israel didn't want to be bombing Iran at a time when the Ayatollah could really wrap people around the nationalist and religious flag.
You know, you mentioned Donald Trump briefly there, and possibly his statements coming out in the last few hours suggest that, Mr. Rubin, that he was more exasperated than doing any kind of victory lap. When he mentioned Israel and Iran in the same breath and almost hyphenated them, saying he was angry with both of them, even used the F word, you sense a sense of exasperation. Is that how he felt, you think? Why wasn't he doing some kind of a victory lap?
No, I think Donald Trump truly believes that he can control the world, and that if he tells people, if he tells other countries to do something, he expects that they will do that. What he is discovering is that countries will always prioritize their own national interests over Donald Trump's feelings. The Israelis have made clear that even if there is a ceasefire, from here on in, they're going to treat the Islamic Republic of Iran much the way they treated Hezbollah. If they derive any intelligence, they are not going to hesitate to strike. In effect, Iran has become the new southern Lebanon.
In effect, also, does that mean that we have a very fragile peace, that it could take the slightest incident for this fragile truce to break?
Well, absolutely. That's the nature of most ceasefires. Ceasefires pause combat. They're not the same as peace agreements. And so we are very, very far from any sense of peace. The next question, however, and this is where the frustration of Donald Trump will likely grow with Iran, is whether they are going to fulfill his demand that they forfeit entirely their nuclear program. The Iranians don't seem to be in the mood to do that, but Donald Trump isn't your ordinary president, isn't your ordinary diplomat. He's simply not going to allow the Iranians to change the context or to prioritize the process over the end result.
No, so, Mr. Rubin, what then have the Americans and the Israelis really achieved? I know that they claimed that their stated objective, certainly the Americans claimed, was not regime change. Either way, that as of now, we don't see regime change or even regime collapse. We are still uncertain just where Iran's uranium-enriching nuclear stockpile lies. We don't know whether that's been fully destroyed or not. So what really has been achieved in your sense over these 12 days?
Let's just look at a sheet of paper and see what has been achieved and what has not been achieved.
Okay.
The not been achieved is regime change, if that was the goal. It was the goal of Israel, not of the United States. And we don't know where all the enriched uranium is. Those are the two drawbacks. What has been achieved is the destruction for months, if not years, of key Iranian facilities, Natanz, Fordo, and Isfahan. Whether or not Fordo has been as destroyed as Donald Trump has claimed, whether or not it has been obliterated, it's not ready for operation. And even if you had the best Russian, Chinese, or North Korean scientists and engineers working, you're still months or years away from reconstituting that. And so ultimately, the Iranians are reeling. At the same time, the Israelis have managed to sow chaos within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. It's one thing to appoint someone new to take over the position of someone who has been killed. It's another thing to build their skill set. And what Israel has successfully done is create a paranoia that corrodes within the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and the office of the Supreme Leader, because no one knows where the spies are. Paranoia just runs supreme.
But there will be those who will say that this regime, Mr. Rubin, has survived to fight another day. We've seen in the past the regime has this unique ability to reinvent itself almost without giving up on its core goals. And that's happened for the last 45 years. Do you believe this time it's been very different, that this 12-day war has changed that fundamentally, that this regime, therefore, could well be having its last stand?
Well, let's compare this war with the Iran-Iraq war. During the Iran-Iraq war, people rallied around the flag because they saw themselves as defending Iran. When Israel attacked, people haven't really rallied around the regime so much. In fact, many Iranians have been pointing out on social media that the casualties, even by official figures, that Israel caused, the civilian casualties, are far less than the casualties when the Iranians cracked down on protest in 2019 and 2022. So there is persistent anger directed at the regime. This is my fear, however. When Saddam Hussein was forced out of Kuwait, George H.W. Bush got up and said, "I call upon the people of Iraq to rise up and throw off Saddam Hussein." And they did. And then the United States and the international community stood aside while Saddam Hussein massacred tens of thousands. If this regime reconstitutes, the bloodbath in Iran is going to be supreme.
I want to ask you this, Michael, because there's a lot of confusion over what actually led to the ceasefire. Last night at this time, we were getting breaking news of how Iran was targeting U.S. air bases in Qatar. And that seemed to throw the world into a bit of a tailspin again. Is this conflict escalating? What happens this morning? Donald Trump unilaterally announces a ceasefire. What really changed? Was it the Qatari involvement? What made Iran and Israel agree so readily to a ceasefire?
Well, you know, the attack on the Al Udeid air base in Qatar was mostly performative. It was ripped from the Ayatollah's playbook after the assassination of Quds Force Chief Qasem Soleimani on June 3rd, 2020. Basically, you bluster, and then you warn the Americans the attack is coming so that no one gets injured, and you're signaling that you want to save face, but you also want an off-ramp. So the Americans believe that the Iranians wanted an off-ramp. What's really looming in the background, however, is that you have these Shiite holidays coming up, and analysts are afraid of a situation in which ordinary Iranians might be riled up with religious passion. And so they want to deny Ayatollah Ali Khamenei that opportunity. The Israelis are fully cognizant of this as well.
From a Trump point of view, do you believe this has strengthened him or does it weaken him? We saw with the India-Pakistan ceasefire, Donald Trump rushing in to take credit. He's trying to do it again. You've told me in the past how he wants to be at the center of every such agreement that's made or anything that's happening in the world. But have the last 12 days actually split apart his MAGA, Make America Great Again coalition, or has it strengthened him?
You know, I think he might come off a little bit strengthened. The MAGA coalition was always vociferous, and the sort of political rhetoric we have now has also been consistent. Now, what's actually going to happen as we start going towards midterm elections in the United States is Donald Trump is going to see who among his own coalition spoke against him, and they are going to get primaried. They're going to have to face someone else striving for their job supported by Donald Trump. And so Donald Trump is going to try to impose loyalty going into the second half of his term. And, you know, those preambles to those midterm elections are already starting.
Just a couple of more questions, Michael. Is your sense, particularly with what Netanyahu has done to Hezbollah, to the Houthis, to taking on Hamas and now Iran, is West Asia, Middle East now going to be a little bit more stable in the near term? Or do you believe what we've seen in the last 12 days could erupt any time in the near future, and therefore we're heading for a period of chronic instability?
Well, I think it's somewhere in between. The Islamic Republic has always been a source of instability, at least from the United States perspective and from the perspective of many Arab states in West Asia. That said, it's a positive that they no longer have control over Hezbollah, that the Iraqi militias are largely staying in their barracks and so forth. My fear, and this is something to which too many American policymakers are blind, is that all these so-called resistance groups, which have been orphaned, Hamas, Hezbollah, the Iraqi militias, could actually be adopted by another state like Turkey or Pakistan, or perhaps both of them.
So in that sense, from an Indian perspective, Michael, how should India see the developments of the last 12 days? We've seen Donald Trump entertain and lunch the Pakistani army chief, General Munir. There was a sense that he wanted Pakistan's support as a state, as a country which shares a large border with Iran, to be on America's side. Should India feel sanguine about what's happened? We generally seem to have been supportive of Israel without saying so openly. We've remained at least relatively neutral. How do you see India's options as these various fault lines emerge?
No, first of all, Donald Trump's loyalty is not long. And so Asim Munir may believe that he is Donald Trump's best friend, but make no mistake, Donald Trump isn't going to hesitate to throw Asim Munir under the bus. I think that Prime Minister Modi was wise for not getting dragged in to an amateurish and counterproductive photo opportunity. That said, India has tremendous potential to leverage its interests here. After all, I can't think of another country in the world against the backdrop of this crisis that enjoys the confidence of Washington and Jerusalem and Tehran.
My final question, we started off by saying who are the big winners? Who's the biggest loser according to you?
I think the biggest loser is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, without a doubt. The biggest loser is probably the Houthis, even though they don't realize it yet, because Iran is going to be inwardly focused as they try to ensure their own stability. The periphery, I mean, no Persian is going to die for an Arab. And the periphery, if they don't realize that, the so-called axis of resistance, they deserve what's coming to them.
Michael Rubin, as always, for speaking so plainly and clearly. Pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Okay, let's raise the question I started off. Who's really then won and lost the war, if there are indeed winners and losers? Israel's civilian casualties, 24 killed officially, injured about 1,000 plus. Hit to the nuclear infra, Dimona targeted but no damage confirmed. Hit to military infra, Israeli army headquarters in Tel Aviv was damaged. Hit to energy infra, Haifa's Bazan oil refinery was shut down after a strike. Let's take a look at Iran. Iran has suffered far more in terms of civilian casualties. 974 killed, civilians injured 3,458. Hit to the nuclear infra. Remember those B-2 bombers, Fardo, Natanz, Isfahan, significantly damaged. Just how significantly will remain a big question. Hit to military infra of Iran. 120 air defense systems, 12 missile sites, bases hit. Hit to energy infra. Tehran's main gas depot and central oil refinery have been hit. Let's therefore now look at it from an Israeli perspective. We heard the Americans, we'll be listening to the Iranians. Let's turn to the Israelis. Major General Yakov Amidra, former National Security Advisor to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, joining me. Appreciate you joining us there from Tel Aviv. This dramatic announcement, General, of a ceasefire by President Trump seems to have at least pressed the pause button on the missile strikes that were going on each other's country, but it seems to be very fragile. There have been reports right through the day of missile strikes from Tehran too claiming that they were hit. Is this a very fragile peace, General, that will not hold?
I don't know. You know, Israel is a very organized state, and if a decision was taken by the prime minister, no one in Israel will violate it. And from the Israeli side, it will be very clear that we are having a ceasefire, keeping the ceasefire, and living with the ceasefire. I'm not sure that the Iranians have now, after the big damage that we did to the command and control structure in Iran, the same control that we have here in Israel. And it will be very interesting to see how it will work in Iran parallel to what happening here in Israel. There was one missile report in the morning to the north part of Israel. I don't know what was it. I don't have yet all the details. If it is an Iranian or something else, I don't know yet. I mean, the picture is not clear.
But General Amidra, given what's happened over the last 12 days, have the objectives of Israel and Benjamin Netanyahu actually worked? We thought this operation was supposed to be, according to Israel and America, about dismantling Iran's ability to enrich uranium for nuclear weapons. We're still not clear exactly how badly those nuclear sites have been hit. There was talk then also of regime change. That has not happened. So in net, has this 12-day war achieved Israel's military and strategic objectives?
Regime change was not one of the goals of this operation, not at all. We had two goals from the beginning to the end: to dismantle the ability of the Iranians to produce nuclear weapon, and probably that was achieved.
May I interrupt? How do you know that? How do you know that the nuclear sites have been totally demolished? How do we know that, sir?
Let me explain.
Go ahead.
They had two facilities to enrich uranium, one in Natanz and one in Fordo. Both of them, one was totally destroyed, Natanz, and the second one cannot be functioned. Even if it is not completely destroyed, cannot be functioned. They had to, there is something called conversion, that you have to take the enriched uranium and to convert it to metal to make the weapon. The conversion facility was totally destroyed. Then weaponization group based on the as far as we know, the hardcore of the weaponization group was killed by us during the beginning of the war and during the war. The last one was the last night. We killed another one from the group. So the ability of the group today, within a few years, they will learn again how to do. And the fact that we succeeded to destroy the second archive of the Iranians of the Iranian nuclear project at the beginning of the war, all the three elements are not anymore exist in Iran. They cannot enrich uranium, they cannot convert uranium, and they cannot use the group that they built for the weaponization. They have 450 kilograms of enriched uranium to the level of 60%. They have to enrich it to 92 if they want it to be a military grade. I don't know, me personally, I don't know where is the 400 kilo. I hope that our intelligence knows. I don't know if the Iranians have the ability to reach it, or it was buried somewhere in Natanz or in Fordo. I don't know. But this is a weak point in the whole chain. But they don't have the ability to converge it anyhow, and they don't have the knowledge and the people with the knowledge to weaponize it. Can they build it in the future? Very much depends on the terms of the ceasefire. I don't know what are the terms of the ceasefire, if they can go back to rebuild it.
General, you know, the war started with Israel claiming that Iran posed an existential threat to Israel. Does that existential threat, according to you, still remain? Or have the last 2 weeks fundamentally changed that in your view?
It was changed, but it very much depends on what was agreed about the future, if Iran might come again to be a threat to the existence of Israel, if they will have the ability to re-enrich uranium and to build the nuclear project, we might face within few years the same threat, and we will have to go back to make the same operation again.
But General, you work very closely with Benjamin Netanyahu. Critics of him say that Netanyahu is the one who's been pushing West Asia, America, and Israel into war. He's the one who's really driven this entire campaign. He's pulled the strings, he pulled America into it. And as a result, it is Netanyahu who has created a more unstable Middle East by his constant attempts to wage war against countries in the neighborhood. How do you respond?
I'll say that it is nonsense. The war was imposed on Israel by the attack of Hamas. A day later, Hezbollah entered to the war, attacking Israel. The Iranians launched the first two big operations against Israel. Around 500 projectiles had been launched by the Iranians before we attack Iran into Israel. So sir, all these claims are nonsense and are not connected totally to the reality.
But no, sir, you're saying it is all nonsense to say that Netanyahu has driven this war, but isn't it true that regime change was his objective? He wants the Iranian regime to collapse. That's not happened. Several Israeli leaders, including your defense minister, have spoken about regime change.
We could continue, I don't know for how long, but the damage in Israel is very minimal. Only 28 Israelis had been killed. It's 3% of what we had in mind when we spoke about the war against Iran. They didn't succeed to stop but one strategic target in Israel, the facility in Haifa. Other than that, they destroy a hospital, they destroy an institute in which we are producing the future medicine for cancer in Machon Weizmann Institute. They didn't succeed to hit even one Israeli military target. We didn't lose even one aeroplane in the whole operation. We had been over Iran more than 1,000 times. We controlled the skies of Iran. We could reach any target that we wanted. We destroyed the whole of the facilities belong to the nuclear, and so I don't know who is speaking about here any success.
You know, let me just, as we conclude, General, look at the other big question. We've had now the ceasefire with Iran. As of now, Israel and Iran have agreed to that. But the bombings and the attacks, General, continue on Gaza. And this has led to widespread global condemnation. Israel has given a squarely disproportionate response to what happened on October 7th, which is condemned by one and all. Do you believe now that we've got a ceasefire with Iran, Israel needs to also pull back from Gaza if you have to have a more stable Middle East? Isn't that what Israel claimed? They wanted a stable Middle East?
Again, the regime change was not in the list of the targets of the goals of Israel. Israel is a democracy. Everyone can say whatever he wants. You need a cabinet decision to make to change the goals of the war. There was not any such a decision by the cabinet. Every minister can say if he has a private vision, it's okay. He cannot impose it on the state. It's a democracy, and regime change cannot be achieved by Israel because there is no any real big opposition or known opposition in Iran, and we cannot decide for the Iranian people who will control Iran.
But let me ask you, sir, I asked you about Gaza, sir. More than 50,000 people have died in Gaza. Do you believe that war also needs to end now?
It's a proportional, from my point of view, it's a proportional reaction because it was initiated by Hamas and we are fighting Hamas, and everything that we are doing to Hamas is not enough proportionally for what was done by Hamas in the 7th of October. So I'm not ready to answer any question. We begin with proportional reaction because there is no proportional reaction to what Hamas did in the 7th of October, but annihilation totally of Hamas. This is the only proportional reaction to what Hamas did in the 7th of October, and we didn't reach this, and we didn't reach this point yet.
Let me ask you one final question then, General. Net. Has the last 2 weeks established Israeli dominance in the Middle East, or has they left the entire region even more fragile than ever before?
Much, much less fragile. Without Hezbollah, without Hamas, without Islamic Jihad, when the Iranians are not controlling anymore, not Beirut and not Damascus, it's a much stable Middle East than it was before the war. It's not Israeli dominance, but Israel is making very clear to every opponent and terror organization what will be the result of operation like the one which had been done by Hamas in the 7th of October. And I hope that will be take out of the vocabulary of all our neighbors any attempt to do the same in the future. It's not a dominance, but it is a deterrence which is needed for Israel in the Middle East, and it's very important that people around us will learn that there are some red lines. If will be crossed by our enemies, our reaction will be very, very strong.
Okay, you claim Israel has drawn a line in the sand when it comes to Iran. I appreciate, though, you joining me, General Amidra, on the show tonight to give us what you believe is Israel's benefits or gains from the war. Now, you've heard the view from Tel Aviv. Let's get you a voice from Tehran. My colleague and our diplomatic affairs editor, Geeta Mohan, spoke exclusively to Iran's ambassador to India, Iraj Elahi. Listen in.
There is a ceasefire now that has been announced between Iran and Israel. But how viable is the ceasefire going to be in a situation that's ongoing and you have Netanyahu at the helm of affairs in Israel?
Regarding to your question, Netanyahu is not reliable. Netanyahu is not reliable. He launched a military aggression against Iranian peaceful nuclear installation facilities, and he also during his military operation, this attack, they targeted residential area, healthcare centers, ambulances, hospitals, residential areas, different, did not pay the least bit attention to the international law, humanitarian law. So he is not reliable. He is not reliable regarding the ceasefire. But anyway, we are ready to respond to any action by Israel. If it continue striking or start its aggression, we will respond.
Ambassador, did America entering the fray really surprise Tehran? Because there was a 2 weeks notice that Donald Trump had given, and yet it entered the war. Was it something that was on expected lines, intelligence reports or assessment that Tehran had that America will be entering the war?
American played a two parallel line. From one side, in one line, they try to convince Iran that we want negotiation, we want to reach to a conclusion, to a rapprochement with Iran. And at the same time, they were working on a military operation, and they were supporting financially, militarily, intelligently, and they have gave Israel whatever it needs for such this aggression. But I use this opportunity to mention that, first of all, Trump himself is not reliable, is not predictable person, and United States also is not reliable. We were preparing ourselves for the sixth indirect talk round with the mediation of Oman, and we were guessing, we were expecting such this aggression, and we were preparing ourselves for such to defend and respond. But at the same time, we try to convince ourselves that United States will not allow Israel. Israel by itself cannot do anything. Israel is little bit, is smaller than to do anything, not only for against Iran, but most of the regional country, in the regional states in our region. Israel cannot do any, and still cannot do anything, and would not do anything without permission and without support of United States and some Western countries. And during the response of Iran, we fully witnessed the support of United States and other, European, other allies of Israel for intercepting our missiles and to not allow our missiles to reach to Israel. Of course, despite of this, our missile targeted different facilities and different infrastructure of Israel.
Okay, so there you have the Iranian perspective claiming Netanyahu is unreliable, so is Donald Trump. Now, amidst all this, there's been so much talk of regime change or regime collapse in Iran. That's not happened. Where does that leave all the dissenters, Iranian dissenters living across the world who've been speaking out against Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader? Shukriya Bradost is one of them. She joins me at the moment. Appreciate your joining me, ma'am. Shukriya. A 12-day war over, but no regime change. In a sense, has the Iranian leadership, even if it has been embattled, shown an enormous capacity to survive a war?
Thank you very much for having me. You see, we have to first see what was the Israel and the US and Trump's goal in Iran. Did they have a regime change plan in the strike against the Iranian regime? We haven't seen that plan in none of these leaders. What we saw was 48 hours ago, it was a Trump's social media. He ended his truth. He talked about if regime cannot change its behavior, why not regime change? That's the only thing we saw in Trump's rhetoric about regime change in Iran. But as a plan, even today, an hour ago, he said that's not our plan because we're afraid that Iran will be falling the chaos, which shows they never had this plan in their mind. But I'm talking about the Trump and the US. How about Israel? For Israel right now is a different situation because Israel knows if it leave Iran like that, like a wounded snake, it will come back with more power against Israel because standing against Israel, fighting against Israel is a golden code for the Islamic regime since they arrived to the power in 1979. So fighting against Israel become their agenda for foreign policy and become the reason they're trying to lead the Muslim world in the where there are Shia and Shia are a minority among the majority Sunni Muslim world. That's how we can see right now situation is that ceasefire going to be permanent? Is that war between Israel and Iran is going to be ended here? I'm afraid the answer is no. We will see, it's a shaking ceasefire right now. We will see another renewing attack, but for the Islamic regime, we cannot say it survived yet because is that one really critical point is here. Where is the supreme leader of Islamic regime? We don't know where is the supreme leader till now. Ali Khamenei is still hidden in the, no one have access to him. Why I'm saying that because the last time when Trump tried through Turkey to reach to Iranian to come to the negotiation table and make a deal, they couldn't. The Iranian side couldn't find the supreme leader who is the only one can decide about this matter. So we don't know what would happen. We don't have a clear view yet.
Now, you're saying you don't know where Ali Khamenei, the supreme leader, is, but are dissenters like you, hoping against hope that the regime would be replaced, not just deposed? To that extent, if not deposed, are you disappointed? Are you disappointed there that the regime is still in place?
That's definitely correct because the Iranian diaspora, mostly they live in the US, they're expecting the US to support their voice, to support the people to have this regime change in Iran, because what we have seen for the civilian protests, always been faced the severe crackdown by Islamic regime. That's how supporting from the US being their main support and their main demand, because they don't ask US to interfere Iranian internal affair and change the regime. What they say the only our demand is for the Trump or for the US administration, even during the Obama time 2009 when we had the largest protest in Iran. What was their demand? They said just don't support the regime or don't deal with this regime. If you don't deal with this regime and you don't want to have this regime on table to negotiate, that's how we can have a chance to bring down this regime. Because whenever the Trump or other administration, they try to talk to the regime, they give the regime the legitimate. They given the regime time to survive. That's why the Iranian in diaspora are asking for.
You're saying that the diaspora doesn't want the world to talk to the Iranian regime, but with due regard, ma'am, it's not the diaspora that will decide who will rule Iran. It's the people of Iran. And if the people of Iran want Ali Khamenei to be their leader, and he's been their leader for over 3 decades now, so be it. You can't do anything about it, can you?
The Iranian diaspora trying to become the voice for Iranian who are inside of Iran. The reason is because inside of Iran, the regime always trying to silence the oppositions and the people's voice. You can see even during this wartime, they cracked down all internet. The net was shut down in Iran because the regime didn't want to people know what's going on. Even not just about the war, but people, they wanted to know what happened to their beloved one. They wanted to have a connection to each other, what's going on. The regime shut down the internet, but the way they're doing every time when there is a uprising, there is a protest, they shut down the internet of the country to make people silent, to don't have this kind of the mobilization power to stand against the regime. So with the way the Islamic regime is saying the power is not Iranian want this regime. The regime is saying power because the IRGC Islamic regime's military has the control of the power on all sector of this country, not just the military sector. They have a control of economy, education, and all different sectors in this country. So it's like a mafia group. You can compare that actually. Mafia group controlling the huge population and the country with force.
You know, you're calling it a mafia group. The truth, it is the political leadership of Iran, like it or not. My final question then, do you therefore believe as a result of what happened in the last 12 days, this regime is weaker than ever before?
Certainly, regime is in the weakest point right now in his history inside Iran, because before that war started, we already hear that, and we analyze that as a military, they outside power, they were in the weakest point because their militia group, their proxy group were failed. But right now, we're talking about the inside. We're talking about the Islamic regimes from inside is in the weakest point right now. So that's how people have a chance to uprise against the regime and change it. But how these people can have a demobilization, come together and protest against the regime, that's still a question. Do we have inside leaders? Do they have this power to mobilize? We have to wait, because what Islamic regime have done for all these 4 decades, they've been successful on dividing opposition, killing, assassinating the strong opposition leaders. That's how we don't have a strong leader to lead people in this path.
Shukriya Bardos for joining me there. I appreciate you joining us and giving us an Iranian dissenter perspective. We've heard, therefore, from the Americans, the Israelis, and the Iranians. Now, imagine being branded an outsider in your own country. Well, that's happening to some Bengali-speaking migrants in different parts of India who are being branded Bangladeshis and deported. Till there is now a political battle over them. Our Get Real India story comes from West Bengal.
This young couple from Bengal, Fazar Mondal and his wife Taslima, have finally returned home after being pushed back into Bangladesh. They have had a traumatizing ordeal, but they're also aware of the reality that it could have been far, far worse. The couple, originally from Hariharpur village in Bagda, had gone to Mumbai for work earlier this year. On May 31st, they were picked up by Mumbai police and branded Bangladeshi nationals.
मुंबई का पुलिस तो तोड़ दिया पूरा डॉक्यूमेंट। मेरा आइडेंटिटी कार्ड था, आधार कार्ड था, मेरा बीबी का जन्म सर्टिफिकेट था, और पैन कार्ड था, मेरा फ़ोन भी ले लिया सब। बोले सब बांग्ला बोल रहे हैं तो सब बांग्लादेश का आदमी है।
They were taken to the Indo-Bangladesh border in Nadia district and on June 6th handed over to the border security force. No trial, no court order, just one-way pushback into another country.
कोशिश की कि फ्लैग मीटिंग के साथ साथ इमीडिएटली उन लोगों का जो डिपार्टेशन है वो हो जाए और वो लोग अपने घर वापस आ सकें। तो इमीडिएटली बीएसएफ ने भी इस इशू को टेकअप किया और अगले 24 घंटे के अंदर ही शाम में अगले दिन 16 तारीख में एक बीएसएफ और बीजीबी के साथ भी फ्लैग मीटिंग हुआ, जिसमें इन दोनों लोगों को, जिसमें फजर मंडल और उनकी वाइफ दोनों को वेस्ट बंगाल पुलिस को हैंड ओवर किया और फिर उसके बाद सीधे हम पुलिस की गाड़ी भेज करके उन लोगों को बागदा जो उनका जो निवास है स्थल उनको वहाँ पर लेके आएगा।
Only after the West Bengal government and the Migrant Workers Welfare Board intervened were they repatriated and reunited with their family on June 16th.
हम लोग इधर का है तो हम लोग बोल रहे थे जो हम लोग इधर का है तो भी उन लोग नहीं सुनाए। फिर हम लोग के ऊपर चिल्ला रहे, मारने का धमकी दे रहे, बोल रहे तुम साइड में हो जाओ। हम दोनों को साइड कर रहे हैं, बोल रहे तुम लोग लास्ट में जाओगे, पहले इन लोग को जाने दो।
The family says the couple are Indian citizens with Aadhaar and voter ID cards to prove it. But what's unfolding isn't being seen as just a documentation error. The ruling Trinamool Congress claims this is targeted profiling of Bengali-speaking Muslims working in BJP-ruled states. The Chief Minister of West Bengal has now reacted strongly. Mamata Banerjee accusing the BJP of harassing Bengalis outside the state.
কদিন আগেও আমরা বিভিন্ন জেলার লোকেদের নিয়ে এসেছি রিলিজ করে বাংলা ভাষায় কথা বললে বাংলাদেশি বলে বিভিন্ন রাজ্যে আটকে দেওয়া হচ্ছে বিজেপি স্টেটগুলোতে আমার কথা হচ্ছে বাংলা ভাষায় কথা বলা কি অপরাধ বাংলাদেশ বাংলা ভাষায় কথা বলে বাংলাদেশি আলাদা আর ইন্ডিয়ান যারা ইন্ডিয়ানদের পাসপোর্ট ইন্ডিয়ানদের সমস্ত আইডেন্টিটি থাকা সত্ত্বেও সব দেখানো সত্ত্বেও
But this case has opened up an uncomfortable debate on concerns about alleged wrongful deportations of Indian citizens, predominantly Bengali Hindus and Muslims, and recent crackdowns across states such as Maharashtra and Assam.
Their journey was of fear, silence and disbelief. Picked up by Maharashtra police, stripped of their identity and pushed to the other side of the border with no contact with relatives or family. But today, Fazar and his wife are back thanks to the government and the BSF. But their ordeal narrates the shadow behind India's migrant workforce. With video journalist Taposh Boiri, this is Taposh Gupta for India Today in Baghdad.
Okay, let's turn from there to our fact check of the day. The claim being made, an audio of the Air India 171 flight that crashed. Pilot can be heard giving a mayday message. The fact is that what you're seeing is an old audio from 2009. It is not the authentic audio of flight 171. Okay, let me end tonight with a good news today story. Lakhs spent, years and fortunes chasing NEET success. Now a remote government school in UP's Mirzapur has quietly created its own Super 30. 12 tribal and Dalit girls have cracked NEET in their very first attempt, rewriting the rules of rural education. Take a look at our GNT Good News Today story. Thanks for watching. Stay well, stay safe. Good night, Shubhratri, Jai Hind, Namaskar.
Mirzapur's Super 30. A government school deep in the hills of Marihan has done what even top city schools struggle to. Against all odds, 12 tribal, Dalit and OBC girls from a free residential school have cracked NEET in their very first attempt. Coming from families where parents are daily wage workers, Manrega laborers and roadside vendors, these girls have shattered the cycle of poverty with grit, dreams and top-tier mentoring.
सपना तो सबका होता है, तो सपना मेरा भी था, लेकिन जिस परिवार से मैं हूँ वहाँ से तो नहीं हो सकता था कि मैं इतनी ज़्यादा, क्योंकि प्राइवेट कॉलेज जो कोचिंग की फ़ीस होती है वो बहुत ज़्यादा होती है, लेकिन इस संस्था की वजह से, नवोदय फाउंडेशन और अरुण सर की वजह से हम यहाँ तक आए और अपने सपने को साकार कर पाए.
This miracle unfolded at Marihan. Sarvodaya Kanya Vidyalaya declared a center of excellence by UP's Social Welfare Department. 40 hand-picked girls from across the state were coached under a model inspired by Super 30, using Navodaya faculty, digital classrooms and free boarding.
हम लोग जितने ATS हैं, आश्रम टाइप स्कूल, जिसका अब नाम सर्वोदय विद्यालय है, जो 29 स्कूल हैं लड़कियों के, उस 29 स्कूल में हम लोग क्लास 10th के बच्चे जो पढ़ रहे होते हैं उनका एक टेस्ट लेते हैं और उसमें से 40 लड़कियों को हम लोग शॉर्टलिस्ट करते हैं. उनको इस विद्यालय में, मड़िहान जो मिर्जापुर में है, इस विद्यालय में हम लोग ट्रांसफर कराते हैं फॉर क्लास 11th and 12th.
One such success is Pooja Ranjan from Sonbhadra. Her father works as a Manrega laborer, but now his daughter is on her way to becoming a doctor.
नीट क्वालिफाई की है बेटी, तो हम लोगों को बहुत खुशी और यानी गर्व महसूस हो रहा है कि हमारी बेटी ने जो मेडिकल की सबसे बड़ी परीक्षा है उस परीक्षा में क्वालिफाई किया है तो।
With 12 girls cracking NEET, 1 clearing JEE and 22 qualifying top nursing colleges, this is more than just a result. It is a revolution in rural education, led by daughters who dared to dream. With Kumar Abhishek, Bureau Report, India Today.